Welcome back to the podcast, videocast, whatever we call this. My name is Darson Grantham, and this is Jared Huseman with me, and I'll let him kind of explain what he does. But first, thank you for joining us. Just a recap of kind of what we do and why we do these videos, educational sessions is we want to help people invest in Des Moines. We want to help people invest in general, but we know Des Moines really well. I work on kind of the smaller deal size, if you will, under 2 mil is probably my kind of sweet spot. Jared, kind of the larger stuff, but between our visions of or just experiences talking to owners, we have a really good grasp on what is happening in Des Moines from an economic standpoint, from a social individual behavior, from a real estate impact, business impact. And so we put these podcasts together because we are in the same office, we're not on the same team, but for a very long period of time, we talked about this stuff and didn't record it. And so we kind of were like, we need to just record it, put it out there. So it's not polished, it's not perfect, but we're raw and authentic, and that's kind of what you're going to get in this video podcast. So I'll hand it off to Jared, and Jared, you can tell a little bit about you, and then we'll get into the topic for today, which is intrinsic value. And I'll be honest, I had to ask what the hell that meant. So Jared will explain.
So Jared Huseman here, president of the Catalyst team, part of KB Commercial Realty here. We are a team that specializes in apartments, multifamily across the state of Iowa. And Darson and I kind of were talking about earlier, we've just always seen how I got along really well on talking investments and real estate. And again, we're just here to help you guys invest in yourselves and your business in real estate, also make more money. And hopefully you want to invest also in the state of Iowa. What I like to say is, and again, this kind of ties back into our topic of the day, is if you hired me, let's say, and I'm going to do apartments across the state of Iowa for you, I'm a shotgun. I can always target. I'm going to do a good job. You get me to the nation, I can do an okay job, but I really start losing my ability to hit the target well. But you put both of us, or either one of us in Des Moines here, where we know the market so well. We know the psychographics. We know the population. We know what's going on. We both lived here a long time. Both went to college here. We went to college together.
That's not a bragging thing. It's really just like we talk to a lot of people about business, economy, and real estate.
Well,
and when you talk to so many people.
And yesterday we were both at an event for half the day where we were talking as commercial real estate driven, but it was commercial real estate practitioners, and there were actually a few points that were dropped that were not even public. That if you were listening close enough, that were just dropped. So these are commercial real estate practitioners.
Okay, let's share one of those points at the end of the podcast.
Let's do it.
Okay.
I got one I can think of right now.
Okay.
But in that room, there was literally billions of dollars of ownership in real estate and billions of dollars of transactions taking place in the Des Moines market.
In the Midwest,
yeah. And right there in this room. And then we're networking these people all day long. So again, like your point, it's not to brag. It's just the fact that like when we live in this market, we know this market very, very well. And this one I was on a panel yesterday discussing is mind depth knowledge, and I was discussing with one of the other owners next to me even throughout the rest of the day some deals that were in our market, and we were underwriting those from our perspective because we are in this market. We are snipers, and we are going to hit the target more often than not and be able to tell you every little facet of a deal. So, I mean, something about, if you call that, I call it confidence, you might call it arrogance, but at the end of the day, we know our market, we know our numbers, and we're going to be able to tell you whether it's good or bad. And that ties into today's topic, which is intrinsic value, which Darcy had to ask about, but at the end of the day, he's already doing it. This is just a fancy, polished term that someone in college, university coined. But what intrinsic value really means is what are the intangibles on a deal? What are the things that are going to affect anything, whether that be a business, whether that be a piece of real estate? What's the intrinsic value that there's actually a fancy term calculation for as well? But again, what are the things that you cannot always add up that are going to create more value for someone in the future? And that's what I want to talk about here because it's a term that's not really heard a lot. But this is also why I think what we do is so important in our market is we know the intrinsic value of properties.
It's funny because like when you say that and you explain it, the first thing that goes in my head is like, what is this similar to? The similar to is when you go to a car dealership and they tell you, hey, this car was driven by a 14-year-old. This car was driven by grandma just to church on Sundays. Same mileage, like the car is the same. What one are you gonna buy?
Right.
The intrinsic value car, grandma's car. Like right. It's just that's what you're gonna buy. So that's the first thing that went to my like analogy mindset of how do you relate this in real estate to something else that everyone has heard that sales pitch by the used car salesman.
Right. And it's funny because, I mean, the used car salesman, maybe they are just selling you. Maybe they're just trying to sell you on that specific car, which, okay, granted, it's good for them. But with us being in the market here, too, we are actually knowing the real story behind a thing. And I discussed even yesterday on the panel and off the panel yesterday is when I'm actually in the market, it's amazing how much more I'm going to know than an agent who's looking at this from Minneapolis, from Denver, from Chicago. They're sitting in their white little cubicle office saying, I can raise rents to XYZ. And me and a manager there were sitting there talking about rents going, there's no way that's even possible. And so again, this is intrinsic value. And the other things we're going to talk about is like this one project we were discussing yesterday. It's probably I won't say the name of it, but it sits next to a brand new development. And they're trying to compare this property and its potential for increase of rents against a brand new developed project. This is a project that was built in 1988 compared to a 2022 built project. Yes, they are going to be a product type, they're going to be apartments. The intrinsic value of that 1988 product is going to be drastically different than this new product as well. And you can go into even different product types of knowing the builders, 2x4 construction versus 2x6 construction.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many nuances to this that we come into the equation. The other one I think of a lot, you know better than me, is like if it sits next to a school.
Yeah.
Will that help the rents or increase the rents? I don't know.
Anything next to a school is going to be better.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. No matter what. I mean, now, can I show you the data on that? I'm not sure that there's that sniper level of data, right? That's the definition of intrinsic.
Right.
It is unfindable in a spreadsheet.
Right. Well, an example, I always make this a lot, now everybody watching are going to know this. There is a drastic difference if you are on Southeast 14th Street in Des Moines. If you are on the west side of that, that's a very different market than being on the east side of Southeast 14th Street. Yeah. That is a hard line, and we start laughing because we know it. It's intrinsic value. There's a difference between being the west side of it, the east side of it. Not saying it's the best area of town, it's probably a C-class area, but as you go more east, it can change drastically from going more west from that Pacific block. Yeah. So same with Fleur Drive in Des Moines here as well. If you're on the south side of Des Moines, if you know that,
that's more of a single family difference.
Yeah, but you'll notice if you go west of Fleur Drive, you become a lot more home ownership as opposed to rental on the other side of it.
Yeah,
drastic night and day
the price
difference.
point's another 50% more.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah.
South of Grand, for us is very popular in Des Moines. So the intrinsic value I think is so important. What are some things that you can think of for intrinsic value beyond just what we're talking about now?
So I think of intrinsic value as the feel that you get when you walk into the property. I'm not good at this. I'll be real candid. I'm the agent that like people laugh. I don't have feelings. it just is, right? Kelsey, my admin, she'll walk into a house and instantly say, this just feels like an icky property. And it's the one that sits for a while. Yep. She just has a really good intuition around that.
Yep.
A gut feel, right? So what is the layout? You can't put a dollar amount on a quirky layout. Conversion properties, multifamilies, like that'd be one where you can that's lump all conversions together.
That's where you have a really good intrinsic value.
But like you could just feel, you walk into some conversions and you're like, it doesn't feel bad. It's just, here's a hallway, here's a bedroom, here's a bedroom, here's a bedroom, here's a bedroom. Where you walk into others and you have to
you're like walking through units to get to other units kind of thing.
It's just weird. It feels different. So that's on paper. You can't see the difference.
Right.
You see two properties sold for different amounts. You just assume that one was way higher quality than the other.
I can think of another property here. It's since sold now. There's another property on the market, apartments. It was for sale for about 3 years off and on. And the numbers looked great. You look at the numbers every time. Numbers always looked good. And that's why I kept going under contract and falling out. And buyers would call me and say, why is that property still out there? And I said, it's because it looks good on paper, but the intrinsic value was not there. Once you got to the market, you saw where it was at in the property. And you walked, you had that feeling about it. Also, people weren't buying the property anymore because again, they realized the numbers didn't add up to what they saw as intrinsic value. That's why you'll see a lot of properties retrade sometimes too, and especially in the apartment world, they'll retrade. It's funny you mentioned the feeling though, because when I used to flip houses, there were certain houses I could walk. Usually at that time it was foreclosures, and I just got a feeling I was going to buy the house. There was just something about it. I could just be like, I'm going to buy this house, I'm going to flip it. And you couldn't quantify it. It was just a certain gut feeling after walking hundreds of houses. You could just get that feeling. And I get the same for apartments now too.
Yep.
I can walk in an apartment complex and I can just get a feeling of what's the apartment like, what it was built, what's the tenant profile as well.
Profile, yeah.
And the profile of a tenant is very interesting that you just cannot always quantify. You can to an extent, but there's a part you just cannot do, especially for certain areas of town.
Yep. In the residential world, a lot of us, and I hear other agents do it too, and I've noticed it's the DIY house. The house that literally the owner, you could just tell they DIY fixed everything, and it isn't up to the right quality to price it at the price that it's at. The last 2 years it hasn't mattered. Years before that it's mattered. Currently it matters. It just does. When you can tell someone has DIY'd it, even if it looks pretty good, it's not professionally done, or just professionally done poorly. And that's on paper, you cannot tell. You have no idea that this nicely rehabbed photos on the MLS is not what you're going to walk into.
And I think the other part that's interesting, this is also I think why we still have jobs, or at least try to have jobs most days, is I think that you also get there's intrinsic value, not just again on a property, it's on a market. Like Des Moines has intrinsic value. It has, if you were to walk Omaha and Des Moines, both are very similar, Minneapolis as well, very similar in population. Let's say Omaha and Des Moines. We're a little smaller than them. Actually, they're bigger than us.
I don't
No,
know.
this actually has back. So Omaha is actually a little bigger than Des Moines. It's actually got almost very similar income graphics, very similar financial field, insurance as well, very heavy. But when you actually spend time in Omaha compared to Des Moines, spend a weekend there, spend a weekend here in the both downtowns, Des Moines is going to feel different. It's got a little more of a vibe going, a little more of energy going. It's got a little younger people coming
Tell
around.
me I need to go visit some cities because I had no idea.
So this is what developers do. A lot of developers will go, and especially big apartment owners, they'll visit these cities and they'll try to catch the vibe of the city. What's the city feeling like? What are people saying? Talk to the people. They'll go talk to anybody on the street and say, what do you think about where you live, this or that? And all these things will create intrinsic value for a market, and not just for a property as well. So properties can have it, markets can have it,
Neighborhoods can have it.
Neighborhoods can absolutely have it, especially if you're looking at
That's
like,
when you first said that, the city thing. I was like, neighborhoods here, like I can, yeah, like you can almost close your eyes and walk in a neighborhood and tell.
Intel. Well, the other part I was going to say too is, and tying off, and I want to go back to neighborhood second, is I think there's also a certain intrinsic value for clients. There's a certain point where like I know this is going to fit this client's need and it's going to fit their value. You know,
Yes.
because again, clients have different values. So the intrinsic value, what's the value to that client?
Yep.
If this client is looking for a buy, long term, and hold, that's a very different value proposition than just to buy, fix, and flip.
Yep.
So again, understanding the intrinsic value both for yourself, for the market, and then for a property are all three very different things. It's really important to understand. It's the intangibles that you have to understand. You can understand this actually from day one or from day 365 to year 18. You know, it depends on how in knowledge you are with what you're looking for.
I was gonna say, how do you get it?
How do you
Like it's a struggle that to me, it's not something that you can like step one, step
Yeah.
two, step three.
Yeah.
You have to just be a consumer.
I think for that point, I think it all depends on where you're at in life and what your experience level is. I think there are some investors who can see intrinsic value in markets or in themselves better than they can deals. Again, you mentioned your Kelsey, your assistant. She can just feel it better. So I think it depends on the person of what you develop, and you can develop it around the three different areas. Again, a market, a property, or just yourself. So if you can know yourself, it sounds stupid and cliche, but know yourself and not know a market and that things too, you might still make a lot of money.
Yep.
So it all depends on a lot of different factors, I think. For me, I can say, from my experience, was just the cold hard knocks of doing it over and over and over again, and quite honestly making a lot of mistakes and losing a lot of money, and also making a lot of money and making a lot of good things happen. So for me, it was just experience, and as I matured as an investor, there was nothing that like created this ability to see things beyond just sheer time and experience. But that was just me, and not everybody's the same. Again, like I said, Kelsey has a great view.
I think it's past experience. And the more I think about this, I listen to a lot of Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't know if you heard of Gary Vee. If you haven't, check him out. But he'll talk a lot about how much he reads the comments of his viewers. And he comments a fair amount, but he reads everything to understand the consumer sentiment, right? So us talking to tons of property managers, tons of real estate investors, and just friends, family, and people about real estate. You just get a better feel of what is the trend, what is feeling good about this neighborhood, what is selling, talking to other agents, what are their agent says, I have buyers in these 4 neighborhoods for these types of things. Oh, okay. Like if you see that on a Facebook group multiple times, you know that type of property from that like demographic is going to sell faster than maybe something else.
Oh, well, it comes down to, again, like I had literally just a little bit ago, I had an owner, a lot of houses, just told me he's starting to see rents taper off in housing for single family, SFR. He goes, I'm starting to get a feeling. He goes, I can't quantify it because I'm getting a gut
it's called
feeling.
the fall winter season, but carry on.
Yeah. But he was just saying he's starting to feel like rents are he's pushed his rents and they're kind of starting to taper off a little bit. We'll see what happens. The other one I think is interesting, I want you to talk about it more because this is more your specialty than me, maybe is neighborhoods. I mean, that is a very interesting one, especially if you can find neighborhoods that are in transition. And again, it's always easy to find everybody wants the B class property in the A class area. That's the easy one to find. You're finding the eyesore on a property. That's easy. But I think what's even harder than I have not luck doing this, admittedly, is finding that property that's in maybe a B class area that's about to become an A class area. We see a lot in historical areas. For our Sherman Hill district was that area that was C class for a long time and has become an A class market now. Absolutely.
When do you think it made that transition? I'm just curious.
What I noticed, and this is my experience, is that it was really the 2000s when it started happening. The recession put it back a little bit. But what I can say from talking to people, knowing people as well in that area,
because I was in high school.
Yeah, and I wasn't really around either. But what I do know is talking to people in that area is that what happened is there were enough homeowners in that area. It's a historical district in our market next to downtown. And enough homeowners basically got together and said, we're fed up. We're done with this. We are tired of seeing our property values to decrease, and we are going to turn this neighborhood around. And it was like literally 3 to 5 people who just got fed up with it and said, we're done with this. We're going to change it around. And I still talk to 1 or 2 of them once in a while, and they talk about how that neighborhood has completely changed over the last 20 years.
Yep. So in the neighborhood, it's actually the reason I have another YouTube channel aside from this one, that I basically do neighborhood tours of different areas of Des Moines, suburbs, inner city, wherever, right? And one of the things that I've noticed is neighborhoods that are doing well have Invest DSM programs in them, right? You have government-assisted programs to help homeowners make the properties look better. Yeah. I also think that a typical investor is not patient enough to actually see the return, right? Because if you said Sherman Hill turned around in the 2000s, that's 20 years ago, and it had to start sometime. I mean, that's bonkers. So if you think of the worst neighborhood in Des Moines, if you could guess what it's going to be in 20 years, you're wrong. Like, you don't know. You can guess, but you don't know. So a lot of folks will try to get on like the back end curve, right?
Right.
So it's already kind of, it's not up there, but it's getting better, and it's known that it is a cool area. So like north of Ingersoll, right? That's an area that you can still buy a 3-2 for under $250.
Really?
Yeah, like it might be a little bit of work, but you can get it. I mean, you should be able to get something around there. But like that's a good value, core of Des Moines, across the street from Sherman Hill.
Yep.
But 10 years ago, I mean, that was $110,000.
Oh, 110, 140,
right?
150, yeah.
So
I bought a house down the area, 140.
Yeah, so like that's a specific example of the Des Moines area. Valley Junction is one right now. It's West Des Moines, and there's programs in it, but it's still pretty stagnant around. I mean, it's gone up, but it's stagnant.
That's one that I know of, and the reason I'm interested in that one is because that's the one where I know some of the owners there. And again, I come back to this is back to the intrinsic value, right? I know, and this is why I would bet on Valley Junction, is I know 3 to 5 owners in that area who have said, we are dying on this hill. We're putting our stake in the ground. We're making this area back to where it needs to be. Because for a while there in 08, 09, you could buy houses there at $70,000, $80,000 a pop.
Yep.
And now you're way up in the $200,000 range or more. And I honestly believe, and this is where it takes knowing the market.
And patience.
And patience. But it usually takes, what I would say is it usually takes anywhere from 3 to 5 good, ardent owners that are saying, we're dying on this hill and we're going to make this area what it is. And again, that's something that you can kind of research and do, but without actually being in the market every day, it's very hard to understand.
And so that area, it's been stagnant, but it is growing. I see that as a potential, and a couple of reasons are the businesses in that main street. So Valley Junction has kind of the historic main street district. They're booming. Like they're all doing really well. Pandemic didn't hurt them. They have grown. There's new apartment type buildings that they're
and those are the ones
building,
I know the developers. I know
that's
those owners.
Really cool stuff. And when you do that as a government or a city, even though it's not really a city, when they do that, it brings a higher level of homeowner.
Right. And those are the ones that I actually specifically know as the developer and the business owners on that street. I know 3 or 4 of them on there, and they have said, again, we are going to die basically on this hill because we believe in our local market. We believe in this. And again, that's something that I think when clients come to town and they walk the areas, there's something about it that feels different. And this is, I guess, for a reason too. I have a client who used to deal a few months ago now, bought a complex. All the numbers made no sense. Like we're talking like a 4% cap rate. He was going to borrow at like 4.75 underwater. I mean, this does not make sense. But there was intrinsic value there because of its location and because of what he wanted. It happened to be in Sherman Hill. It happened to be the investment he wanted. It's next to Big Grove Brewery, just opened up.
I know who
and we
you're
knew it was
about.
coming. And again, it was one of those deals where we saw the intrinsic value in that deal. And again, numbers wise, it made no sense. But from a gut standpoint reaction, we were like, we are going to bet on this area. And it kind of ties back into, again, this is not what we're talking about, what we talked about yesterday a little bit. Sometimes intrinsic value can also be just, I'm next to someone who's a lot bigger than me. And we talked about it yesterday too, but if you're a residential investor trying to buy a house, go buy next to that developer who's putting up a $10 million apartment complex. Like, guaranteed, If he's betting $10 million on it, you can bet $100,000 on it. Yep. And if you're betting $10 million on building an apartment complex, go do that next to the guy who's building a $100 million office building. And if he's doing that, go do that next to the guy who's building a $1 billion whole redevelopment of Jordan Creek Mall like we had here. But again, you can find intrinsic value just by being the small guy next to a big guy too. And yesterday we were talking about as well, that's why we think more residential investors, more residential agents should be going to commercial events, seeing what's happening in the commercial world so they can just better inform what you were doing yesterday.
So like the commercial, we can talk, we'll probably do a whole different podcast on that commercial event. I'm going to in some capacity, and you can, we'll figure out how to make that work. But it's one of those where like, if you're going to bet on a single family house, there's something that supports that single family house.
Right.
The business and the government behind it. Mm-hmm. And so in order to study that, you have to understand that real estate runs those markets also, large real estate. Mm-hmm. And so they are like, and I say they, $1 billion companies are partnering with cities to do things.
Right.
You need to know, as a buyer, your agent needs to know, whoever you use needs to know, or you need to know what's going on in that area. And not that like, you're going to get some super insider information. You're not going to know that a developer is going to go buy this block of houses. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about being close to the Starbucks method. Right. Like you kind of mentioned. Right. Just knowing that, that area is going to grow. There's more buzz about it. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I get a lot of this from random Facebook group pages that I'm on of like, what are people talking about in different neighborhoods? Right. So if you are scoping out a neighborhood, go join a neighborhood Facebook group.
And they probably have them.
They for sure do. They for sure do.
100%.
And so learn like, what are people complaining about this neighborhood? Figure out who the Debbie Downers are. Forget about them, and figure out what people actually care about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And again, I know one topic. This isn't even not public knowledge. It's pretty common. But you mentioned earlier, because I'll bring it up. Microsoft partnered with the city of West Des Moines, to put $1 billion project down there south of Cumming and West Des Moines. And in that, they had to put $100 million of infrastructure into that whole area. It was brought up yesterday that they are connecting Waukee all the way there from the Kettlestone project and the Grand Prairie Parkway Trail, connects all the way down through the south, all the way back up to Veterans Parkway.
I couldn't, it's random.
Right.
Like, if you drive there, I don't know if you've done it.
Oh, I have.
I live that way. Mm-hmm. I drove through a gravel road and I come up on this nice highway in the middle of a bunch of freaking cornfields. I'm like, well, clearly they're planning to develop this at some point in the future.
And again, it was brought up yesterday, and it was like, look, at the end of the day, again, follow the infrastructure as well. But again, back to following the big guys. The big guys can be the cities. Follow the infrastructure, follow the big developments. Again, if these are the intangibles you have to know about in a market if you're looking to invest and not just gain cash flow, but also gain appreciation. It's also why I think it's important with this.
It's really an appreciation play.
Yeah, but this is why I think it's important too, is that you mentioned earlier it might take 20 years. This is why it's so important to at least have some cash flow in the process.
Yeah.
Because then at the end of the day, if I can get a little bit of cash flow, maybe not a lot, and we can define what a lot of cash flow or a little cash flow is anyway, but if I want to play appreciation game, which is fine, it's not a bad thing to play, where can I get that little bit of cash flow enough to support me for 20 years, 15 years? Yeah. Then at the end of these 20 years, my house, my apartment building, whatever it is, my commercial land is all paid off, and now I have this huge appreciation because I've been invested in the right area.
Yeah.
And that's so important.
Yep. I mean, it's the answer. It's how you get rich at real estate, instead of creating a job.
Right. And at the end of the day, and one of the guys who was on stage yesterday, I won't say his name, but he's made a lot of money off the intrinsic value, keeping his ear to the ground, and he's bought a lot of real estate and land in the path of development. And he's watched it skyrocket over the years. He land banks. It's a term called land banking. And everybody's like, well, how do they make money? Well, they kept their ear to the ground for 30, 40 years, I mean, and I love we mentioned Gary Vaynerchuk there, and this is, again, off topic, but a little bit similar. There's a reason Taylor Swift is one of the top singing performers of all time as an artist. They've said she does the same thing. She reads all the comments. She knows her audience very, very well. And every time she releases a song, it's because she's watching her comments. There's a reason. I mean, I'm trying to tell background on pop culture here. The Kardashians, though, they do the same thing. Kris Jenner is brilliant at watching what's going on in public opinion and what do I need to do to be relevant in all the noise. How do you think they stay relevant after what's been 15 years, the Jenner family, and all this up and going? Either way, they're brilliant when they stay on top of everything going on in the market. So this is all we're doing as well. We're doing it on a more of a micro level. We're watching Des Moines. I'm watching Iowa as well. Yep. But when we watch these things, we can give intrinsic value to our clients or see it ourselves if you guys just trust us enough to listen.
Yep. And that's tough. I can understand and put myself in someone else's shoes of like trusting someone that is going to make money if you invest. Right. Like I understand that. That's tough.
Yep.
Right. So get comfortable with it.
Yep.
Because either you're doing the research as the investor or you're doing a combination of doing the research and talking to your agent,
right,
or an agent, or a broker, or whatever.
Well, and here's the reason I think it's here's
to do it.
Here's the reason I think it's hard though, is because at the end of the day, I'm going to tie it back to the used car salesman. How many of us had bought a used car where the used car salesman told us this was driven by little old grandma, and we bought it, and all of a sudden it broke.
Yep.
And so that's the hard part, is that you have to have a certain level of trust with who you work with. I understand it doesn't happen overnight. It's also why we just do these videos as well. We show that we're just straight shooters, we're investors ourselves in the market, but we try to show you guys that we're not the ones that are going to lie to you, and if we did, it's just because we missed them to it. We missed. I mean, I've missed deals.
Yep.
There's been plenty of deals I've done where I'm like, I guess I didn't see it. I didn't understand it. And maybe the client did see it. Maybe the client didn't see it. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I do my best as well. And
I think you made a good point. It's a reason why we do this podcast and the video. It's like, I listened to a podcast on the way in, and it's a hardcore prepper guy, and he goes, no one knows what you're all about until you open your mouth. Right? And that's so true if you think about it. And there's a lot of people in our industry that really, like, they're not sharing their ideas. They're not talking. Right. They're good at what they do. Don't get me wrong. We're not the only two good people in the market, but like, they don't, it's not really what they're all about. And that's what we try to do, is this nitty gritty niche stuff. We're back. Anyway, it got brought up yesterday, though, as well in the market, and it got brought up in general. I remember one time, a friend of mine, I said, I want to give all my information away for free. And he said, why do anything for free if you can get paid for it? And I believe, honestly, kind of back to the Gary Vee Chuck, is just like Gary Vee or anybody else, fan of Chuck, give it for free, because I just believe in giving free, and then if I create value for you guys, hopefully we'll figure a way to make it all work. Absolutely.
There's plenty of people.
Yeah. And
it goes back to, again, yesterday, actually, one comment was brought up yesterday. We were talking about, just in general, if we're in a recession or not, we're not going into the details of that, but we were talking about why this time could be different than 08, 09, right? And someone on stage next to me said, this time just feels different because we're more collaborative. Information's more freely available. She said she was back to this time, she was a property manager, and she didn't know who was giving concessions or who was giving rent, dropping rents and stuff. She goes, we didn't want to...
When you say she didn't know which other ownership groups were giving the rent concessions.
Right. I mean, they'd heard about it, but they had no way to quantify it. And she goes, what's different now is that with the access to information, with the collaboration between other owners and people, we're able to share more and just share better, so we can get a better grasp of the market. And I think that's where the difference is, again, why we do this podcast, why we do this video, whatever you want to call it, is we're just trying to share information. At the end, we believe in sharing is actually going to create better results from everybody involved.
Until I'm proved differently, that's all I'm going to do.
100%. So,
anything
wanted to wrap this up?
Yes. What is the thing that you learned that is not public information yesterday?
Okay, so if you caught it on stage yesterday, one of the gentlemen that was emceeing is on planning and zoning for one of the cities, and very well respected. And he actually made a comment that West Des Moines is looking at a convention center over on Grand Avenue, west of I-35.
It got tabled.
But he said it was brought up there. And this is a gentleman that is very well connected, been around for a long time, very well respected. And either way, he mentioned it just in brief passing, in the briefest moments.
Yes, he did.
But it was enough where if you were listening, you caught it, and it was like, well, wait a minute. If West Des Moines gets a convention center, that could be huge, especially for that area. If you're watching the Grand Avenue area, the DMU campus, the DMAC Center, the ICE Arena, if we got a convention center there, that would explode the south part of West Des Moines, which is, again, opening up right now with the Osmanian project and development. So that's
it would make no reason to go downtown.
Yeah, it would create, again, right now it would literally create 3 different nodes, I would say, inside Des Moines. You'd have Ankeny, Perry Trail, you'd have downtown Des Moines, and you would literally have Jordan Creek, West Des Moines. You'd have those 3 areas that are essentially their own micro mini cities, economies. And Jordan Creek already is kind of that way, but it would further enhance it with the DMU campus, with the DMAC campus, and then with the convention center as well. It would drastically change the landscape of all the markets. And again, and I'm not going into Altoona, I'm not going to go into Waukee and Cuspire Dodge and stuff too. These are all different things. But for the general three parts of our market that are going to attract most people, the trident, I would say, the triangle, be Ankeny, downtown, West Des Moines in this area are going to be massive.
Yep.
So that's what I caught. Did you catch anything that wasn't?
Yes, and I don't remember where she was at. She was at one of the big developers, but
on my panel.
Yes, on your panel. She said it was basically like, how do you decide on a property? How do you know the facts of what you're underwriting? And she basically said, you put down what you think, and then you just wing it from there. Or you make sure you have the people that are going to get it done.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, this lady is on, like, they're a multi-million-dollar company. And she basically said, like, we put the numbers down of what we think, and then we go make it happen.
Yep.
That's crazy that it's like that willy-nilly. I'm sure there's more systems and processes and blah, blah, blah. But like, that's literally a term that she used, and she used it multiple times. And I was like, reminder, overanalyzing is going to put you behind.
Yep. At the end of the day, and again, it's funny because that was actually on my panel. I know who it was. I know him very well. But that person and another person both said these guys were, I would call OGs. These were people that have been in the market for 30, 40 years. These were not like some just get up there millennial person who's made a lot of money. These were in the market times. And here's what kept coming up on that same panel I was on, which what I was moderating, was a lot of uncertainty in the market, unprecedented times, which means we're going back to fundamentals. If fundamentals look good, we're going to figure the rest of the shit out, basically. So look to fundamentals, and then at the end of the day, the rest of it, figure it out.
And back to the recession. You said, I love the recession question because they're like, it is a recession, but we have no unemployment.
Right.
So essentially, how do you have a recession that's actually like legit when you have no unemployment?
And the funny part was when I asked that question to the panel, all three of them were like, who really cares? And we're tired of the question.
Yeah.
And I know the one person you're specifically referencing, they were very much just like, let's just say we are so we can get it over with.
Yeah.
Let's just say we're in a recession just so people stop talking about it, we can go forward.
Yep.
Why spend all this time analyze something that doesn't really affect? That's also, you mentioned this in the previous
We've said that multiple times.
You said before, recession is always measuring the previous economies anyway, the previous things. So what's it matter? What's it really matter if we're in a recession? Because it's just measuring against the past, not against what's going on in the future.
Yep. Okay, so, that's it. So
anyway,
we'll wrap this up. Jared, I'll let you think about it, and I'll go first. Stuff we have going on. We are still doing our Friday morning coffee real estate meetup at Smoky Row. Join us from 7 to 8:30 a.m. every single Friday for that. Any of the social medias, I'm on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, real estate meetup groups. And then also our second Tuesday of the month, we have a real estate investor networking meetup. And that is going to be a group of people who have been investing prior to 2008.
Okay.
So we'll have 3 or 4 people on the panel there, and we'll run it for 45 minutes. It's in West Des Moines, 6 to 8 on Tuesday the 13th. So if you're interested, if you're local, come join us. Love to have you out. If you're not local, I'm going to try to live stream it of some capacity. We'll see how that works with internet connection and all that world.
The setting the mood and the lights on going to be interesting.
Yeah, with panelists, it's really tough to get good vocal audio on live stuff. So we'll see.
Yeah, for me, honestly, guys, not much going on here. We're just still doing deals, and this is not me personally, but I'm traveling out of country next week for 2.5 weeks. It's hard to get a lot of stuff done when I have 1 week left of work, and then I have 16 days out of country here. So not much going on. Not even have cell phone service there. So at the end of the day, reach out to us though, as always. My team is still going to be available for any questions.
If he's out, I'll help you handle the deal.
And
no worries.
And we've already discussed that. Actually, I said any deals come in, feel free to reach out to Darson. I trust you to get stuff done. But for the next few weeks, I will be out of commission. Nonetheless, this does tie back into one point as maybe a final wrap up. I'll say this. I am going to Africa, going to safari. I am going to go hike Mount Kilimanjaro. And I bring this up for a reason, guys, is that I made this comment earlier. Someone said, wow, that's what a great trip. And I said, I want to live life while I'm still alive. So this all ties back around. Why do we do what we do? Why do any of us build a business? Why do you invest? At the end of the day, you're doing it for a reason. You're a why. And it's to do whatever you want, whether it's take care of your family, provide a legacy, or just go do cool shit. I don't care what it is. Figure out what you want to do. This is one of my whys. I want to go do cool, fun shit. So
that's way better. I'm just buying cows.
See, look at that. He just buys cows, and I just go hike him up a mountain or something. So again, figure out your why, guys. I mean, it's super cliche, super important, but at the end of the day, like, you can't take money with you. It is not. I mean, you can give it to your kids, yes, but you cannot take it with you.
You can always make more.
Yeah, you can always make more. So at some point, like, this also ties back into
typical salesperson.
Well, back to earlier though too, as well, is that like back to your story about like the unknown. At some point, guys, get comfortable with the fact that you're going to do a deal, you're going to lose money. Figure it out. It's okay. There's always more deals out there to go do. Get comfortable with the fact of losing money. At the end of the day, I don't care what it is. Just get over that fact. Get comfortable with spending money once in a while to go do fun stuff, whatever it may be. Get okay with spending money. Don't be a tight ass. It's not a fun way to live life. So that's my final 2 cents here as we wrap up here. And
that was a soapbox, apparently.
Yeah, soapbox. All right.
See you later.
See you guys.